everyone, as you can probably tell by my outfit, I am Biker Chick Minion Michelle, and today for this Music Talk Tuesday, I wanted to address some instrumental music for Halloween, in case you want to scare the bejeebers out of all the little kitties that come to your door. Apologize that this video is being uploaded late. Unfortunately, we have been having a variety of issues when it comes to uploading videos. First, YouTube was fairly slow when trying to upload videos, and also, unfortunately, we've had to deal with some sound quality issues as well. I'm hoping that this is all taken care of, so hopefully I can get through all of these videos and have them uploaded. It might take it might be to today, it might be to tomorrow, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see. But without further ado, let me address the songs that I wanted to discuss for this particular Music Talk Tuesday. Starting off with Night on Bald Mountain by, and I believe I'm going to butcher this name, but Mussorgsky, and I believe that is a Russian name. But basically, this song in particular, I think, is fairly fantastic as far as a creepy Halloween song goes that has no vocals to really back anything up. It has this whirlwind power of energy. You can just feel the unsettling environment. You can really feel sort of put off by listening to this song in particular. And I think it generally gives off that Halloween-esque impression. And the interesting thing too is that the song was actually trying to base itself off of something that is Halloween related, which is witches, and in particular Satan. So basically, the Bald Mountain sort of represents the place that the witches would go and basically worship Satan, supposedly. According to what was the intention behind the composer, as to what the song ultimately means. Also, this song has been used within Fantasia. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this, but Disney decided to use it for one of their shorts that they compiled to within Fantasia. And it's really well crafted and well done as far as an adaptation is concerned, and sort of reflects onto a similar idea, because instead of it just being specifically witches, they kind of showcase different, kinds of dead people and spirits and things like that. But in this case, it's supposed to be like some sort of evil Eastern style god. In this case, they call him Chernobog. But again, there is sort of a difference as far as, I guess, the interpretation of the song and when you really look at the Disney version. But overall, I think its message is thoroughly clear. It's trying to convey this very uncomfortable setting, and in doing so, really bring in this powerhouse of energy and bringing in quiet moments of eeriness, and it just comes off as very spooky, very mysterious, and also fairly intriguing, I think, as well, which is also something that I think really works to this particular piece's advantage. So it's really enjoyable, definitely worthy of a recommendation if you have not heard of this particular song. But I'm sort of glad that Disney kind of picked it up, because it, I don't think, was thoroughly recognized, and it actually, the artist wanted it to be, I think, a part of an opera, but unfortunately those visions were never really realized, and I think had not Disney picked this particular piece up, it probably wouldn't have maybe sparked, I guess, the uh, relevancy, I guess, within modern times, considering the fact that it was generally not as well known as maybe some other famous artists like Tchaikovsky or Bach or whatnot. So definitely interesting and worthy of listening to if you are interested in that sort of thing. The second song that I wanted to briefly mention is The Dance of the Goblins by Antonio Bazzini. And this one is interesting because it's largely primarily through the violin, and at least some interpretations are, and I think the most common it is violin. But the combination that this song I think offers is actually rather interesting because unlike the previous song where it's kind of clearly established that it's supposed to be terrifying, it's supposed to make the audience uncomfortable, this one kind of combines this sort of cheery and yet eerie feeling together. And largely that stems through in which how I think the violin sounds, because if you listen to it, it sounds like what the title sort of expresses, you know, the goblins sort of dancing. But at the same time, you know, you oftentimes think of goblins as being rather evil creatures. And I think that this particular song tries to bring that out as well, but it's kind of like how a lot of the times when you sort of think about various concepts dealing with Halloween, there is oftentimes some trickery to it and having itself not taken so seriously. And I think this song in particular sort of tries to bring that to light, that that even though these goblins are supposedly evil, they're kind of having fun, you know, they're sort of celebrating their one time to sort of, I guess, be merry, really. So it really brings out that that sort of combination, and in doing so, I think offers something that's rather unsettling, but at the same time is kind of just fun and upbeat. And the interesting thing too is although it does not explicitly say, at least from what I could gather, exactly as to what the song is about, I think largely it does reflect onto its title. And I think it was largely designed to give you that kind of image or images of these goblins sort of having fun and being merry, and sort of being evil, so to speak. That's really, I think, its real intentions, and it, I think, comes off across fairly effectively. So another interesting one to consider, to have going around this time of year. Third song that I wanted to briefly address is one that is actually in particular fairly famous, probably the most famous on this list. And I'm sure there's people who maybe not even necessarily know the title, but once you hear the song, you're like, oh yeah, that song. And that is Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Bach. And I am probably butchering the whole name, but hopefully I'm not. If I am, I'm sorry. But this piece is also really interesting because it gives a different angle compared to the two previous songs. I think it almost, at least from listening to this song, and I think this is largely due to the organ, because the organ is really the primary instrument here, is really trying to give you this very almost deathly sounding vibe. I mean, it's very low, it's very I think intense at times, and then other times it's just kind of a little bit more upbeat and happy. But oftentimes when I think of this particular song, you know, I think images of like a haunted house come to mind, of, you know, ghosts kind of wandering around, you know, it really brings out the sort of death, I think, that oftentimes people associate with when it comes to Halloween. And you do see the sense that you do feel the sense of dread, you do feel um, the sort of kind of impending doom, but then you also see the kinds of lightheartedness that you come to sort of expect from Halloween, because Halloween is really designed to be fun. It's not just to be scary. And I think it really works here. You really do get that. Uh, you really do get that feeling, I think, across when listening to this. So it's definitely one of the most famous on this list, and also very interesting, and has all these different layers to it. As far as to exactly what the song is supposed to really mean, as far as the artist's interpretation is concerned, there wasn't really any information I could find as far as what Bach really was really intended to have with this particular song. But a lot of his songs have been associated with being very gaudy, very um, religious, spiritual. So I think it only makes sense that these kinds of things would oftentimes maybe get associated with Halloween, especially when you're considering that, at least within the Christian tradition, Satan sort of plays a huge role in um, as far as what we consider scary, frightening, and just evil. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about that song. But moving on to the fourth one, and I am so bad with these names, but uh, this song is called Danse Macabre by Camille Saens, I believe, and I think it's French from what I can tell. But this piece has is a little bit more of a direct meaning behind it, unlike a lot of the previous songs that I mentioned, where there is either some explanation behind it, or there's not really a huge amount of explanation given to the song at all. For this piece, though, it is about death, sort of coming to life, and in doing so, he summons all of the dead, and basically he plays on his fiddle, and then you have all of the dead sort of dancing around and having fun. And it really does give off that vibe, and it also mentions too, at least from the research that I could tell, that it is supposed to be the day of Halloween on midnight. At midnight, that's when supposedly uh, these dead, as well as Death himself, come out and sort of play and have fun. And I think a lot of those sorts of supposed really legends are primarily associated with Halloween, because again, Halloween is the celebration of death, um, or at least the holiday of death. But it has this great power to it, and a lot of it just displays what you would expect a song like this to display when discussing this kind of topic and dealing in particular with death. And I think what it tries to do also is it tries to make sort of a certain light from it, considering the fact that, it's really the only time that the dead can really come out and sort of, I guess, really feel actually alive. Unlike all of the other times of the year where they're just sort of dead. They're not, they're not, there's no really celebration for them. So I think it only makes sense that it would bring in that sort of vibe as well. But there's a lot of different, I think, emotions that you can gander from this song. But it's really interesting. It's a great, well done piece of music, and I think it really describes essentially what the song is trying to convey, and I think does give off a lot of the things that we come to associate with when it comes to Halloween. So definitely interesting and worthy of recommendation. But nonetheless, the last song that I wanted to briefly mention is Funeral March of a Marionette by Charles Gounod. And I believe he's English, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that last name incorrectly. But um, the interesting thing about this song is although it has its pleasant moments, it also tries to be fairly sneaky and kind of sort of under wraps at times. And I think this can oftentimes be associated with when it comes to Halloween because, around this time of year, you're trying not to, I guess, really get scared, unless you obviously intentionally plan to, like if you go to a haunted house or you go to a maze or maybe some kind of amusement park, but at the same time you're trying to kind of gander your way out without being frightened. I mean, even when you go to these places, you're kind of trying to play it kind of low and, not sort of stir anything up. And this is what I think largely the song kind of conveys. It's almost like, if you go into a graveyard or something, you don't want to mess with anything, especially at nighttime or something. It really tries to insert that aspect into the song. Now, the actual meaning that the artist was kind of going for was basically discussing a funeral of a marionette. So it was really not as Halloween oriented by its intended purpose, but if you're discussing a funeral and, death, I mean, it kind of makes sense on a certain level. And it sort of does sound like a little bit like a funeral procession, but at the same time, it's kind of, it's unsettling, and at the same time, it tries to be kind of just intriguing as well. So it's offering a combination of things, and I think that's also what makes it rather fascinating. And definitely worthy recommendation, and definitely play that around the time, Halloween rolls around and you're trying to get the kiddies to come and get freaked out. Good song to play, as well as all of these songs that I've mentioned on this list. But I think that's ultimately all I can say about all of these songs. I'll be sure to put links below in the video description so that you may enjoy them for yourself. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I was here last year, and I also did a music talk, so feel free to check that out. But hopefully I can come back next year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all maybe hopefully next year, and wish the next minion luck. Goodbye, everyone.